Conor McGregor's prime is over. It's over. I know that's a sobering thought, and you might even be saying I'm exaggerating. And if I hadn't looked at the numbers, maybe I would be skeptical as well. I'd think you were exaggerating. I'd say, okay, yeah, time has elapsed, but no, like there's still time left in his prime. But no, there actually is not. I'm not saying this because I'm actually happy about it, or this is some kind of let's dunk on Conor moment. It's actually quite the opposite. I'm pretty bummed about it, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm actually like dismayed that we have gotten to this point, and we're now past the point where he had the best he has to offer. Like that window has closed. Now, I'm not saying he's never going to win again. I'm not saying he won't beat somebody good. I'm not saying he won't be in a fight that you care about. That's really not the point that I'm making. I'm making a separate point. I'm making a point about his prime, about the portion of any athlete, fighting or otherwise, the portion of their career when they have the best they have to offer, where it can be a mix of both. They've reached the peak of their physical powers, or they might be just off of the peak of their physical powers, but they're still pretty good, and they have then married that with an understanding of knowledge of the game and best practices, and they can put all that together, and they can do their best work. That window has closed. And I can't believe I'm saying it, but it's true. Now, how did we get to this position where I have argued, and I am arguing, that Conor McGregor's prime is over? Well, UFC President Dana White went on the Pat McAfee show this week, and he was asked by Pat, hey, when is Conor coming back, and is he going to fight Michael Chandler? And this was his answer.
Conor McGregor's fighting Chandler.
Eventually, yeah. Hopefully this year.
No, I heard we got a date. We didn't have a date. Chandler's pushing for a date. People are pushing for a date. Conor said he knows a date. Everybody has a date. You're the guy that got to set the date. You should say the date.
There is no date.
Come on!
I'm hoping for the fall. We get it done in the fall.
How old is Conor McGregor without looking? Without looking it up, how old is he? The answer is 35. 35 years of age. And in July, he'll be 36 years of age. Folks, an athlete's prime is generally, and there's some wiggle room here, but it's generally considered to be somewhere between 25 and 30. I would argue somewhat anecdotally that in fight sports you can extend that to 32, sometimes 33, but typically the drop-off you really begin to see, especially at the elite level, is around 34 or 35. Now you might note, hey, at heavyweight it can go much later than that. That is true. Individually, you might have seen other fighters who passed the age of 34, 35, or right at that moment, still had the best they had to offer. That can be true in certain circumstances. But if you guys know my sort of rule of 35, at the elite level, certainly, once you get to that point, it is very, very difficult to win fights. It can happen. It does happen, but especially in terms of title fights, when the weight class is from 125 to 170, it is very, very difficult to either win a title or defend it, right? So it is very, very difficult to do that kind of a thing. And so if what we're saying is Conor McGregor is not going to come back until he's 36 years of age, it got me to wondering, well, what has he been doing all this time? And what have we gotten out of his athletic prime? And for folks who might be wondering, is there any hard data on what a prime looks like? Yes, there of course are going to be variations, but just very quickly, for example, you could point to a 2021 paper from Dartmouth Sports Analytics where they sort of argue, quote, research suggests professional athletes tend to reach their peak performance around ages 25 to 30, with some exceptions. Physical attributes like reaction time and athletic abilities peak in the early to mid-20s, while mental attributes like strategy and tactical awareness continue to develop into the 30s. This is what I mean, right? And I'll post the link to that study in the comments below, but you get the idea of what I'm talking about. 25 to 30 for your physical prime in terms of just athletic raw gifts, and then even if there is some decline there, it picks up a little bit later when you have all of these other understandings of the sport or the game in which you are competing. So those are going to be your rough estimates, but I don't know many fighters 170 pounds and below who at age 36 are doing their best work. Again, there's going to be an exception here or there, but the numbers certainly are not in your favor, and I would argue that it would affirmatively put someone, an elite fighter like this, out of their prime. Now, I wanted to go back to this question of like, okay, well, what did we actually get out of his prime? At the age of 29, Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather. So what did we get past that? Because we got a lot of Conor before that, right? At 24 years old, he fought twice, only one time in the UFC. 25, just one time. But of course, that was when he got injured after beating Max Holloway and he tore his ACL. Then at age 26, he fought 4 times in the UFC, and this was against the likes of Dennis Seaver, Diego Brandao, Chad Mendez, Dustin Poirier, and he finished all of them in either the first or second round. At age 27, you got 2 fights from him. At age 28, you got 2 fights from him. At age 29, you only got the 1 fight. You got no MMA fights. You got the 1 boxing fight. But okay, what happened after that? Because obviously up until that, people got a lot of Conor for the most part, and they liked what they got. It's a pretty grim story. At age 30, he fought 1 time. At age 31, he fought 1 time. At age 32, he fought 2 times. That was better, and he did suffer a ghastly injury after that. But we got 0 times at age 33, 0 times at age 34. If he doesn't fight before July, we're going to get 0 times at age 35. He's only going to come back at 36. And now we're at the place where both athletic performance is dropping off. And by the way, it'd be one thing if he'd been training this whole time, right? And just sort of stayed up on best practices, has really refined his craft, and they could come back. But he's taken enormous amounts of time off. Ladies and gentlemen, Conor McGregor's prime is over. It is over. I am not saying he won't be in big fights. I am not saying he won't beat somebody good. I'm not saying he won't be in a fight that you care about. That's not the argument that I'm making. I'm saying that the peak years he had to dominate the game between athletic gifts and development of his craft, the very best years he had to offer, those are over. This is the reality about Conor McGregor. He has beaten the game already. If the goal of the game was to do something to be remembered and change it and set new heights and reimagine what is possible at the elite level, he did all that. If the goal of the game is to get filthy rich, he did all of that too. He made a fight with Floyd Mayweather happen. He got enormously rich from it, and then, of course, he parlayed that into this Spirit's career, where he made an enormous amount of money off of that, both for himself and for future generations of anyone that carries the McGregor name. Like, dude, he already won in many, many ways. Maybe some of this complaint and complaining isn't all that necessary, but there is still something about it that feels off. It is really hard to understand and have watched. I remember exactly where I was when Marcus Brimage welcomed Conor McGregor to the UFC, and that meteoric rise, and then everything from the Mayweather fight, and then after that, to get what we have gotten. I understand some of that has to do with injury, and a devastating injury at that. I understand, as I just mentioned, in all the ways that matter, he's really kind of already won. Maybe some of this is bonus time. But for those of us who had been holding out some hope that Conor would return to some degree of regularity while he still had the best gifts and the best talent to offer, I would sadly but affirmatively argue that window has now closed. It is now gone. And now, whatever we get from Conor, I will be happy to get it. I want to be clear about that. I will be excited for it, but it's not going to be what it could have been. It's not going to be this window where they could have used him more appropriately and certainly more consistently. There's a lot of theories out there about why they haven't used him. He's got 2 fights left on his deal, reportedly. Maybe they're saving him to help argue for a better TV deal. Hey, we've got 2 fights left with Conor. Won't this entice you to sign a deal with us? Maybe it's for overseas partners. I've seen some theorization about that. I don't really know why the UFC has done it explicitly. That part to me is not altogether clear. But I sort of sadly note that this window has basically closed. And I think the game is going to be poorer for it. By the way, one last note on this, because Conor's not the only one aging out. There's some other ones as well. Check out this tweet from Lucas DeWitt. He says, quote, ranked 125 to 170ers who have either turned or are turning 35 in 2024. You have Poirier turning 35 back in January, Beneil Dariush turning 35 in May, Renato Moicano also turning 35 in May, Aljamain Sterling turning 35 in July, Charles Oliveira turning 35 in October. They're not the only ones, man. And again, this doesn't mean that they're all going to lose all their next fights because they've sort of turned this age. Like this is the magical demarcation line. Going back to my 35 stat for the championship fights, It's already been beaten twice by Tyron Woodley. It will be beaten by other ones in the future, by the way. Alexander Volkanovski has a fight basically in a week. We will see what happens with that. But the point I'm trying to make is it is clearly harder to achieve at the elite level for someone like this. And Conor, maybe they can give him some soft matchmaking. Again, he might win no matter what. There are ways around this. But I'm just kind of bummed out by the fact that here we are in 2024, and we may not get Conor until he's 36 years of age. And I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I get it, man. He got rich. He changed the game. He did everything he was hoping to do, basically. But there were a lot of years in his prime that we lost. We're not going to get him back. And I don't know, man. Kind of sucks, doesn't it?